Imagine this. The happiest day of your life. The day you've dreamed of since childhood. The dress, the vows, the people you love most all gathered to celebrate your new beginning. But what if, in the middle of all that joy, danger was quietly waiting at your table? What if, with one sip from your glass, your love story could have ended in tragedy? That's exactly what almost happened to one young bride, until a German shepherd named Rex barked, growled, and refused to back down. No one understood why at first, but what this loyal canine uncovered not only saved the bride's life, it revealed a chilling secret that shocked everyone at the wedding. The church bells rang softly as sunlight poured through stained glass windows. White flowers lined the aisle, their fragrance mixing with the sweet scent of fresh roses. Guests filled the hall, dressed in their finest clothes, laughter echoing as cameras clicked to capture the moments of joy. The bride, Emma, looked radiant in her flowing white gown. Her smile carried years of dreams, and her eyes sparkled with the promise of a new beginning. Beside her, the groom, David, stood proud and nervous, his hands trembling with excitement as he prepared to marry the love of his life. Family and friends filled every seat, their hearts swelling with pride and happiness. Children played in the garden, grandparents whispered blessings, and every corner of the place glowed with love and celebration. The atmosphere was so perfect, so magical, that no one could have imagined danger lurking nearby. In that moment, it felt like nothing could go wrong. But sometimes, even in the most beautiful moments, shadows hide where we least expect them. And it was in the middle of this perfect day that an unlikely hero quietly watched, listening, waiting, ready to act when no one else could. Among the laughter and music, one pair of watchful eyes stayed sharp. His name was Rex, a powerful German shepherd with a sleek black and tan coat and ears that never missed a sound. Rex wasn't just any dog. He was a trained canine, loyal to his handler, Officer Mark, who had been invited to the wedding as a family friend. While Mark mingled with the guests, Rex sat calmly by his side, steady and alert, like a silent guardian. Children couldn't resist running over to pet him, and guests smiled warmly at the sight of the majestic dog. Many joked that even on a wedding day, Rex seemed to take his duty seriously. He didn't wag his tail aimlessly like other dogs. His gaze moved carefully, his nose sniffed the air, and his body stayed ready, as if he knew something others didn't. For Emma, the bride, Rex's presence felt comforting. She had always loved animals, and she often said, "Dogs can sense what humans can't." She had no idea just how true those words would soon become. As the ceremony turned into a joyful reception, Rex continued to watch quietly from the corner of the hall. To everyone else, it was just a perfect day filled with music, dancing, and celebration. But to Rex, something in the air didn't smell quite right. As the reception came alive with music and laughter, waiters moved gracefully through the hall, placing plates of food and glasses of champagne on each table. The bride and groom sat at the head table, surrounded by loved ones, their smiles brighter than ever. But Rex was no longer calm. His ears twitched, his nose lifted higher, and his body stiffened. He stood up suddenly, pulling gently at Officer Mark's arm. Mark frowned, sensing the shift in Rex's behavior. The dog's sharp eyes locked on the bride's table. Slowly, Rex padded forward, sniffing the air, his movements deliberate and focused. Guests watched curiously, some chuckling at the sight of a dog seeming so serious at a wedding. Then, Rex let out a low growl, his gaze fixed on the bride's glass of champagne, the one waiting for her first toast as a married woman. He sniffed closer, then barked loudly, startling everyone around. The music faltered. Conversation stopped. All eyes turned toward Rex. Some laughed nervously, assuming he was just excited by the food. But Rex refused to move away. He barked again, louder this time, his teeth bared slightly, not in aggression, but in warning. Emma froze, her hand inches away from lifting the glass. A chill ran down her spine. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and Rex wasn't about to let her take that sip. The hall was silent, every guest staring at Rex as his barks echoed against the walls. Officer Mark quickly stepped forward, kneeling beside his partner. He trusted Rex's instincts. This wasn't random. Something was wrong. Mark gently lifted the bride's untouched glass from the table. At first glance, the golden liquid sparkled innocently under the lights. But Rex wouldn't stop. He paced, growled, and kept nudging the glass with his nose as if to say, "Look closer." A waiter hurried over, nervously insisting everything was fine, but Mark's gut told him to check. He raised the glass to his nose and sniffed. Then his expression changed. Beneath the sweetness of champagne, there was something bitter, chemical, unnatural. Mark's heart pounded. He quickly set the glass aside and whispered urgently to Emma, "Don't drink anything." The room filled with shocked whispers. Guests leaned forward in disbelief, some gasping, others covering their mouths. Emma's face went pale as she realized how close she had come to disaster. To confirm his suspicion, Mark discreetly asked another officer guest to test the drink. Within minutes, the truth was undeniable. The glass had been poisoned. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Chairs scraped the floor as people stood in shock. The bride nearly collapsed, holding on to David for support, while Rex stood tall beside her, his tail stiff, eyes sharp, as though he had been guarding her all along. The celebration had turned into chaos. What was meant to be the happiest day of Emma's life had nearly been her last. And now, everyone wanted to know, who could have done this? The once joyous hall was now filled with confusion and fear. Guests whispered frantically, eyes darting from table to table, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Mothers pulled their children closer, and the band fell silent, their instruments hanging midair. Emma clutched David's arm, trembling. Her dream wedding had just been shattered by a nightmare. Tears welled in her eyes as she asked the question no bride should ever have to ask, "Who would want to hurt me on my wedding day?" David wrapped his arm around her protectively, his own face pale with anger and shock. "We'll find out," he whispered, his jaw tight. Rex, however, didn't look shaken. His body was still tense, ears pricked, nose working furiously. He was searching, tracking something invisible to the human senses. Guests watched in silence as the German shepherd moved from the head table, weaving through the crowd, sniffing chairs, glasses, and trays. Then, suddenly, he stopped. His head swung sharply toward one of the servers lingering near the side of the hall. The man's hands shook as he tried to look busy, but sweat trickled down his forehead. Rex growled again, deep and fierce, his eyes never leaving the waiter. Gasps filled the room as suspicion turned toward the trembling man. Officer Mark stepped forward. "Stay where you are," he commanded firmly. But before anyone could move, the waiter dropped the tray in his hands, glasses shattering across the floor, and bolted toward the exit. Panic erupted. Guests screamed. Some rushed to protect Emma, while others scattered in fear. But Rex was already in motion, his muscles coiled like a spring, his paws pounding the floor as he lunged after the fleeing suspect. The chase had begun. The hall erupted in chaos, but all eyes were fixed on Rex. The German shepherd shot forward like lightning, his nails clicking against the marble floor as he closed the distance between him and the fleeing waiter. The man shoved past chairs, dodged startled guests, and sprinted toward the door, but Rex was relentless. His powerful legs moved with purpose, his ears flat, his eyes locked on the target. He wasn't chasing for fun, he was chasing for justice. "Rex, go!" Officer Mark shouted, though the dog needed no command. Instinct and training carried him forward. The waiter burst out into the garden, thinking he'd escape in the crowd of wedding guests outside. But Rex was faster. With a deep, fierce bark that made everyone freeze, he leapt. His jaws clamped firmly, not to harm, but to stop. He latched onto the man's arm, dragging him down to the ground with incredible strength. Gasps and cries echoed as guests flooded outside. Some couldn't believe their eyes. This loyal dog had single-handedly taken down a man who had almost destroyed a life. The suspect thrashed and kicked, but Rex held him firmly, growling just enough to keep him pinned. Within seconds, Officer Mark was there, pulling out handcuffs. He knelt beside his partner, patting Rex's head firmly. "Good boy. You've got him." The crowd erupted in applause and shouts of relief, though fear still lingered. Emma stood frozen at the doorway, her wedding gown trembling as she realized, without Rex, she might not be alive to see another moment. The waiter, his disguise unraveling, finally broke down under the weight of so many eyes and confessed with a trembling voice. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. But what did he mean? Who had sent him? Rex had caught the villain, but the story was far from over. The once celebratory garden was now a tense stage, every guest staring at the pinned-down waiter. His chest heaved, eyes darting around as if searching for a way out. But with Rex's jaws firmly gripping his sleeve and Officer Mark's handcuffs ready, there was no escape. Mark's voice cut through the murmurs. "Who sent you? Why target the bride?" At first, the man stayed silent, his lips pressed tight. But the weight of Rex's growl and the sharp, accusing stares from dozens of witnesses cracked him. His voice trembled as he blurted out, "It wasn't me. I was paid to do it." The words sent a wave of gasps across the crowd. Emma, her face pale and fragile, clutched David's hand tighter. "Paid? By who? Why her?" The waiter's eyes flicked nervously toward the crowd before finally spitting out the name. And when it came, the entire hall seemed to hold its breath. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some random act. It was someone they all knew. The culprit was none other than a distant relative of the bride, someone who had smiled through the ceremony, hugged her at the altar, and pretended to celebrate her happiness. Driven by jealousy, greed, and bitterness, they had planned to ruin Emma's life forever. Emma's knees buckled as the truth hit her. Tears filled her eyes, not just from fear, but from the betrayal. A family member, someone she trusted. David held her close, whispering that she was safe now. The crowd murmured in shock and disgust, realizing how close this happy occasion had come to tragedy. But in the center of it all stood Rex, calm now, his tail wagging slightly as if he knew he had protected not just a bride, but the sanctity of love and trust. Without him, no one would have seen the truth in time. And though Emma's heart ached from betrayal, it also swelled with gratitude. Because sometimes, heroes don't wear uniforms or medals. Sometimes, they walk on four paws. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the wedding party slowly began to regain its calm. The poisoned drink was taken away, the culprit was escorted out in handcuffs, and the once terrified guests now found themselves speaking in hushed voices, still processing what had unfolded before their eyes. Emma, though shaken, stood tall. Her white dress, now slightly wrinkled from the chaos, still glowed in the evening light. She looked at Rex, her unlikely savior, and tears spilled down her cheeks. Slowly, she knelt down, gathering the brave German shepherd into her arms. "You saved my life," she whispered into his fur, her voice breaking. Rex leaned into her touch, tail wagging gently, his eyes full of loyalty. David, standing beside her, nodded in agreement. "He's more than a dog. He's family now." Guests who had once gasped in terror now clapped softly, some even crying at the thought that this wedding could have ended in tragedy if not for Rex's courage. The priest, who had earlier blessed their union, stepped forward and said, "This day will not be remembered for fear, but for the courage that saved it." Emma smiled faintly, realizing that the scars of betrayal would take time to heal. But she also knew something powerful. Love and loyalty always defeat malice and hate. And Rex was living proof of that. Later that night, as the couple finally exchanged their vows in a quieter, more intimate ceremony, Rex lay at the foot of the altar, watching protectively. It was as if he knew his mission wasn't just to save lives, but to guard love itself. The moral of the day was clear. True heroes don't always come in the form of humans. Sometimes, the purest heart, the strongest loyalty, and the greatest bravery belong to those who cannot speak, but whose actions echo louder than words ever could. Rex reminded everyone that trust, love, and vigilance are priceless, and that sometimes, even in our darkest moments, light shines from the most unexpected places. That day, the wedding guests walked away with more than just memories of a ceremony. They walked away with a story they would tell for the rest of their lives. A story of how a loyal German shepherd named Rex turned what could have been a tragedy into a miracle. Emma and David never forgot that moment. Their marriage didn't just begin with vows. It began with a reminder of how fragile life is, and how sometimes the smallest details, The flick of an ear, the bark of a dog, can change everything. And Rex? He became more than just a protector. He became a symbol of loyalty, a living reminder that love isn't always spoken. It's shown in actions, in sacrifices, in bravery that doesn't ask for reward. It makes you wonder, how many times in our lives do we overlook the quiet guardians around us? The ones who, without words, carry the power to protect, to heal, to change everything? Maybe that's the lesson Rex left behind. That true love, true loyalty, and true courage often come from the purest of hearts, sometimes even from four paws and a wagging tail.